the director fell out during Christmas vacation somewhere. He was, I don't remember his name. I'm pretty sure he was a sitcom guy hired to do a sitcom. And I have a feeling, since there was some production in the pilot, there was some barking dogs and opening prison gates and groups of men coming to, since it was one camera in some production, I have a suspicion that this guy just got cold feet. I heard that he kind of freaked at the last minute and couldn't do it, or called in sick or something. And so my agent was on the scene and said, "What about Butler?" And somebody said yes, and so I went and did it. And it was an immense amount of fun. Because the characters were, it was a locker room. I mean, all the characters are men, and it's a big locker room ball that you're into, and you got to hold the control and keep the craziness down. But the guys are good guys, and they're so gifted in their comics, so that they get all over each other, and nobody's allowed by the others to get too far out of, too big ahead in the whole circumstance. When Crane would become a big man, those guys would maul him, absolutely maul him. So it was an amusing, good environment. I mean, under the surface lay egos everywhere, but the surface kept them intact and in control. It was fun. I brought a certain production savvy to it at that point, which was appropriate to it, and which I was beginning to come by. So it was just a joy, and boy, did it look great in black and white. I remember the production designer being a very savvy guy, and on the hills nearby, he staked out sheets to look like decaying snow, sections of snow. And it was all cold and muddy and hideous, and it just looked wonderful. And I didn't much care about the irony or the social significance or anything. That's fun martini talk directorially, in the bar sometime. But on the job, for the job, about the job, I couldn't care less. A lot of guys do. A lot of guys feel that social statement is important. I don't want it. I want to take the audience on a trip and not let them think. I think if they think, I've lost. Just feeling, that's all I'm trying to do. Give them a half an hour, a couple hours of a place to go and then come back from. That's it, folks. If there's significance, if the critics want to talk about other things, be my guest. But I'm anti-significance. And in answer to your question about, a few years after the Holocaust, after World War II, 15 years, whatever, 20 years, yeah, I don't care. I'm not interested. That's not my job, and I don't think it's the writers or producers either. I think it's the critics. But even when Kazan does Gentleman's Agreement, I'm more interested in the drama than the significance. Anti-Semitism, okay, but initially that's intellectual to me. Sure, it's a wipeout. Sure, it can be dramatized. Sure, it's hideous, hideous. We don't even have to begin to discuss the Holocaust. But where I come from, I'm closer to a roller coaster than a Holocaust. That's what I'm paid to do, in my view. So to take them on that trip and return them is what it's about. Now, I'll accept that I'm being shallow, I'm being blind, I'm being blindfolded. I'll accept that. I don't care. I have a lot of respect for that guy in ancient times sitting on the log with the fire saying, "Once upon a time." That's all I am. No more, no less. But in that circumstance, that guy does a pretty great service for those people. And he isn't being significant. He's just saying, pretend with me. There was this guy. He was 11 feet tall. Basketball players are 7, 7.5. This guy was 11 feet tall. Come with me. I remember a black and white discussion between Ivan Dixon and myself. which is off the subject but on the subject. At one point in one of the episodes, I think I did the pilot and then maybe 3 or something like that. In one of the episodes, a French resistance worker with the beret and the accent and the whole shot comes in with the troops, the guys, and they all start going, wow, and they're coveting her. And Ivan Dixon, black guy, excellent actor, good guy, director, the whole shot, he's coveting her. And I start thinking to myself, with almost opinionlessly, I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. For our audiences, we shouldn't have a black guy coveting a white girl. Right, wrong, I don't care. I'm only thinking of the audience. So I'm thinking, And after not much more than 3.5 seconds thought, I say to Ivan, a good friend and a good guy, Ivan, listen, I don't think you better do anything in this scene except tend to your knitting, meaning his shortwave set or whatever the hell he was working on. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, here are all these guys digging this lady, and I don't think it's appropriate for you to be digging this lady. He took big exception to it. Unangrily, principally, he took big exception to it. And so we had a huge civilized argument. He said, I don't think you're right. And I said, man, I said, we're not talking about justice here. We're talking about show business. And I said, what we're doing is saying that's okay. And he said, well, isn't it? And I said, of course it is, but that isn't the point. And we started to do a little of that, and not personally, as you hear. And I said, or he said, I don't remember. Look, let's have Eddie down here and he can decide, Eddie Feldman. And the producer, a good savvy guy, came down and I said, look, we've got a problem and I don't care either way, but I told Ivan not to covet the white lady for obvious wrong or right reasons, sociologically permeating our society, and he doesn't think that's the right thing to do. What do we do? And Eddie said, Ivan, do it. I said, fair enough. On we went. No rancor, no repercussions, nothing. But that is an example of one of those scenes and an example of my detachment, right or wrong. I don't care. I care about the audience. That's all I care about. By the time I showed up, a terrific comedy writer named Dick Powell, no relation or connection, who was president of the Writers Guild at one point, had written the pilot script. And Eddie Feldman, a very knowledgeable comedy producer, and Dick had worked out the script. And I just thought it was great. It was one of those scripts that's much funnier on foot than on paper. It seemed smart, it seemed hip, it seemed oblique, clever, funny, but mild on paper. That's the way Dick Powell wrote. But boy, you get that stuff on its feet, and it's solid as a rock. That guy was really good. I don't know if he's still with us. He might be, so he is really good. But I appreciated the writing and was surprised once we started to hear the words in each other's presence and then got it up in staging. I was just knocked out how solid and strong it was. Smart, sensible, funny work. I remember a specific place in rehearsal where we came up to an Act One curtain that was pretty good, and it had been rewritten by somebody to punch up the jokes. And Crane said, hey, what about the original tag? And we went back to it, and it was great and stronger than what had been rewritten. So, fun, good fun, classy show, and Werner, big part of the success.